interest to get this. Now here's the United States notes, and this is what Kennedy actually did. He took the promise to pay off the United States note too. And actually that would have then been money because there was no promise to pay. It was $2, and it just says United States of America, $2. So if we actually printed this kind of money and took off the word note, this would be currency, it would be final payment, it would be the money, and you wouldn't have to pay a dime of debt. Nobody would be in debt, not the government, not the user, not anybody, and you'd have the currency. Now, if the government printed these up and we built our infrastructure, roads and bridges that Obama's talking about now, and of course he said, but of course the government's got to be in debt. Why? If you can print up your own currency, you don't have to be in debt, do you? Nobody has to be in debt. And if you issue it in lieu of taxes, think of the benefit the people got. Now they have the roads and bridges and the infrastructure that basically runs the country, which you need to run a country. You can have commerce without money. But you cannot have commerce without transportation, can you? Because if you and I can't get to each other or can't move the freight to each other, we can't have any commerce. So commerce is the most basic thing, transportation, to the whole system of commerce, the whole system of runs the nation's economic system. And if the government printed up their money and spent it to do that, they wouldn't need to have any taxes to have those built, and the money would then flow into circulation all over the country at the exact same time to the individual that did the work first, and then flow into the, when you spent it, when someone worked for the, help building a road, and there's all kinds of things that go into building roads. There's all kinds of well, you got to have engineers, you got to have people design it, you got to have people, the inspectors, you got to make sure that the pack is correctly right, to hold the weight and the right kind of soil, you know, for the right kind of soil, and all these things go into building roads and bridges and stuff. So all these people being employed all over the country, rebuilding our infrastructure, and then as soon as they got paid, most of them go home and buy a beer and on the way home and go home and give, and then start using the money to pay bills, don't they? So then that money would flow into circulation just exactly the same way when you get a loan. The first you do go out and start spending it, don't you? And that money goes to wherever you spent the money for. You might even go have a beer to celebrate your, you know, you're getting the loan, and then you go out and start spending, you know, spending the money for whatever you got the loan for. This would work the exact same way, but you would have no debt whatsoever, and you wouldn't need any taxes either. Now, what more could you want? Now, here is the perfect monetary system. It monetizes the production of the people. It's all based on wealth with no debt and no taxation. There is not anything better. If every nation did this, we would probably have peace and prosperity in the entire world. We wouldn't have all these wars trying to somebody get somebody else's property, because they could all benefit from the actual production they produced. And every nation has raw materials. So they have people who can think and people who can work, don't they? The principle would apply internationally, and you'd have the perfect international money system that would all be individually issued by the countries. Each country would have its own sovereignty and its own money, but the money would have the exact same value any place in the entire world, because it would be based on the exact same principles. And I think this is the bill I was looking for. Yeah, see, as soon as the bankers saw what the government, what Lincoln was doing, they rushed right in, and about 6 months after they issued those others, the full legal tender, they passed this one here. Now they changed the wording on the note. This note is legal tender at its face value for all debt, public and private, except duties on import and interest on the public debt. No, the banker said, we got to get together. We can't stop this. You can't print up your own money to pay our interest. That's got to stop. And then he went into counterfeiting about you couldn't counterfeit the bill. But the really important thing is all of a sudden, whoa, whoa, whoa. We can't have the perfect monetary system because now we won't get interest on our promise to pay you that didn't cost us anything. It only cost you. But in the process, it turned all the people's property over to the banks. Because when you issue all money as a promise to pay, you have no risk, but you still get the interest. The interest can't pay because all the money only comes in as principal. So, but yet when the interest kicks in, your debt grows, but your money supply does not, and therefore you can't possibly everybody get out of debt. Now, I had this conversation with Robert Ewald personally in the Federal Reserve boardroom in Washington, D.C. And he said, yes, Mr. Dale, you're right. As an individual, you can get out of debt, but collectively we cannot. So collectively, we have to get deeper and deeper in debt every year. And the next generation has to get deeper in debt than the last one to keep the system going until in point in time, and it happens to every borrower in time. If you keep borrowing, in time the debt will get so large that the interest alone will be greater than the total consumer income. And we may be at that point right now. If we're not, we're just only a few short years away from it. And so this system cannot get better. It can only get worse. And think of the actual, what we talked about before with General Motors. Now the senator clearly said their problem was too much debt. The answer was to give them a $17.7 billion greater loan. Now how in the world is that going to induce their indebtedness, and how is that going to reduce their interest load? Because now that new debt is going to also draw interest, isn't it? Now they're going to have to add that to their cost of business already. So they either got to cut the labor to beat the dickens, because nobody seems to ever want to cut the banker out, and yet the banker does absolutely nothing for the money. It's just a promise to pay, and actually based on your promise to pay, and your promise delivers the future production to him. And that's just it's a non-sustainable, non-workable monetary system. So if we really care about ourselves, our country, our kids, or anything else, we will start addressing this problem, and we will really start studying this, and then demand we have a workable, sustainable monetary system. We have a lot of talk about green, green, invest green, do green, sustainable environment. Well, it's just as important, and probably more important, to have a sustainable money system. Because nobody I know wants to drink dirty water or breathe unclean air. But it takes money to clean those things up. If your money is short, so short, and your cost of doing business is so great because of your interest and taxes, there is simply no way that you can possibly pay for all these other things that needed paid for. But if you eliminate the interest and taxes, just think of how much more your paycheck would be if you got the same paycheck you got right now, plus all the interest and taxes they take out before they give it to you. Your disposable income would be a lot greater, wouldn't it? And see, we have to think about all these principles, and money is like anything else. It has to run on a certain set of principles. And you can have principles that turn out good product, or you can have principles that turn out faulty design products, don't they, that doesn't work as well. And that's exactly what we got. And I think this is where we really ought to stop for today. And we need to really think about this, and then we need to come back and go through some of these things again another time.